Welcome back to APP 2015. I'm speaking to George Tambassis, the National President of the Pharmacy Guild of Australia. George, welcome.
Thank you, Chris.
It's been a very busy APP. What have you made of the conference so far?
Well, it's been very busy, as you say, Chris. There's a lot of people here. It was certainly very, very busy last night when the exhibition opened up, and certainly the arena has been packed to the rafters on most days that I've been able to be in there. It was certainly packed on the Thursday when we had the Health Minister present to us, and it was certainly packed this morning when we had Senator Nick Xenophon present to us. So yeah, it's been really, really busy, which is exactly what we want at APP. We want as many pharmacists here attending, networking, learning.
So what have the highlights been for yourself so far?
Well, as always, it's a highlight to have the Health Minister here, but certainly a surprise to have Senator Nick Xenophon as well, which we only sent out his personal invitation a couple of weeks ago, so he dropped everything to be with us this morning. So they've been the two key highlights. We've also had some international speakers, if I can just go through our international speakers, because they're really important. So we've had Paulo Duarte, who's my equivalent from Portugal, speak to us about the Portuguese model of pharmacy.
Well pronounced too, by the way.
Thank you. We've also had Ken Orr, again, my equivalent from New Zealand, speaking to us about professional services and what's happening in New Zealand, which again, well, I think is quite good for the people that come to this conference. And last but not least, Doug Howie, who's the CEO of the equivalent organisation in America. So he's given us the USA perspective, and I think that's been fantastic for the delegates, yeah.
And given your recent tour of the Outback, it must have been a real treat to see Hannah Mann and Kimberley Pharmacy Services win Pharmacy of the Year.
Yeah, I went quite west, but I didn't go that west, as where Hannah was. But yeah, we were delighted for her to get the Pharmacy of the Year prize. The other two pharmacies were fantastic as well. I was lucky enough to visit the Melbourne pharmacy, because that's where I live, and I found they worked really, really well. But they're all worthy winners, but Hannah was obviously incredible. I think her speech was quite emotional. I think quite a few people in the arena got quite emotional, and I've just recently spent a little bit of time with her, talking to her. She also spoke to Nick Xenophon a lot, because he was really, really interested, and certainly even the Health Minister, Susan Lee, was extremely interested to have a chat to us, so they had a bit of a chat, so which was really, really good.
Now, speaking to the Minister, you mentioned her appearance. There's been, talking to pharmacists around, there's been a mixed response to her message.
Yep.
What did you make of it? From a Guild perspective, what did you think of what the Minister said?
Oh, the Minister only accepted our invitation just recently, because she's been extremely busy. She only took over just before Christmas in this particular portfolio. We allotted 15 minutes for her to speak. She took all the 15 minutes. I think she tried to cover as many points as she could. It is quite a complicated agreement that she needs to sign. She made some clear messages, or I heard some clear messages that she made in that speech that morning, specifically that she wanted to hear from as many people as possible, and that's what she's been doing with all the travelling that she's been doing. I know she was in Perth just before she came and saw us, and she was in Broken Hill the day after. So she's moving around a lot. She certainly wants to sign the agreement with the Guild. She made that clear message in her speech, and we're certainly working with her as closely as we possibly can.
And do you think she's getting a good handle on the agreement and the portfolio?
Yeah, all the questions that, and the discussions I've had with her personally assures me that not only is it a complicated agreement, she wants to learn about every segment of the agreement, and the discussions I've had with her have really given me that opinion of her.
And Nick Xenophon spoke and said, in his opinion, both of the major parties didn't quite understand the impact of simplified price disclosure on the profession. And the minister's speech, that there was definitely that undertone of don't expect, or possibly get ready for some cuts. I mean, do you think that's true when you speak to politicians?
Well, our delegation in Canberra a couple of weeks ago, when we had 60 pharmacists attend at least 60 meetings with all the backbenchers from both sides of the party, I think that played a critical role. Now the backbenchers are at a certain level of understanding of that community pharmacy agreement, and specifically what simplified price disclosure is causing to our community pharmacy sector right now. That in itself is helping ministers like Susan Lee understand the reality of simplified price disclosure. So even though she may not have been able to articulate that in her speech, because it was 15 minutes and it was something that she needed to address in a packed arena, I really think she understands the local issues, because the backbenchers certainly have been contacting her. I know that for a fact. And she's actually quite close with a lot of pharmacy owners in her electorate. She actually met a young lady as she came out of the arena at APP that is in her electorate that owns a pharmacy. I know she knows all the guys in Broken Hill, and she's pretty close to all the guys in Albury. So she's pretty connected to the community pharmacy network in her electorate, which is a huge electorate, which runs all the way up New South Wales, all the way up to Broken Hill.
But I mean, I think Xenophon was right too, that they, in a sense, pharmacy is or does present itself as an easy target for politicians to hit. I mean, you know, how do you get around that?
Well, I mean, it's his opinion, and look, at the end of the day, Nick has given us a lot of good advice. He's very generous with the way he approaches us. He honestly believes that, and we're not going to allow that to sway us from getting an agreement that our members, community pharmacy owners, pharmacists and other stakeholders are going to be happy with. I'm acutely aware that keeping everyone happy in the sector is going to be very, very hard, but that's what we're heading for. That's our only aim, to make sure that the agreement delivers, and delivers on a multi-platform way. And yes, of course we don't want to be a soft target with the government. I don't think the government has got a target on us. I think that the government, and we have been respectful with them, and they've certainly been respectful with us, even though we've had our differences. I mean, the SPD is a difference. You know, that we believe the previous government broke the agreement. We believe the current one had to book it in for whatever fiscal reasons. Okay, let's agree to disagree, but let's fix it up in the next agreement. They get that. They're certainly listening to that sort of message that we're giving them, that we've done the heavy lifting. But to move forward, we need certainty for the next 5 years. And that certainty has to come in the form of the 6 community pharmacy agreement. They're listening. Now, in terms of being a soft target, we'll let other people comment on that. And Nick's allowed his opinion, of course.
And do you think, I mean, speaking of the agreement, do you think politicians and the health department, for that matter, understand what pharmacy can do, the range of services it can offer, and secondly, they understand that to do those effectively, there does need to be some sort of remuneration?
Well, we're trying to articulate that and prosecuting that. That's by far our 2 most common messages. Key, that dispensing has to be key, has to be remunerated directly, transparently, no more time for cross-subsidisation, trading terms, what have you. So direct remuneration for that core service that we provide, that dispensing service, and also transparent funding for all the other services that we can show we can do, that we're trained for in all our undergraduate courses that we use, that we get trained for in the universities. I think that message is getting through, but it doesn't mean that we don't continue putting that message through, because there's other mixed messages coming through, as you can imagine. So our key message is that make sure you fund us for all those key services, and make sure the funding is targeted so we can get really good patient outcomes. And of course, if the patient outcomes are there, make sure we're remunerated properly. It's a fairly key message, but we've got to stick to it.
And I was speaking to Paul Sinclair earlier, and he was talking about the minister obviously wanted to have the agreement signed by the end of June. I think it is, isn't it? Do you think that will happen?
Well, not only do we need to have it signed by the end of June, we need to have it signed before that. So let's be clear. I want all your viewers to know that we're heading to sign the agreement much sooner than that. We certainly want to get to the pointy end in weeks rather than months. So the minister's been pretty clear with that too, certainly publicly and privately. So way before June, we want to make sure we can enact the first agreement on the 1st of July. So it needs to be signed months before that. So we're heading to the pointy end very, very soon, and thereafter, hopefully with a positive outlook that certainly the Guild has, and the minister's given me lots of positive signals that we'll sign it very, very soon, and that way we'll be able to implement all the new initiatives, including the dispensing remuneration, on the 1st of July. We can't do that if we sign it in June. Let's make sure we work together to actually sign it before that.
Yeah. And in terms of one service, which is, there is movement at the station in terms of vaccinations, and then the opposition from doctors' groups.
Yep.
I mean, how do you see that playing out? I mean, it seems that there is movement across the country on vaccination.
Yep.
I mean, are you positive?
Yes, extremely, because as you know, Chris, the legislation has to go through all the state and territorial legislation areas. It's positive, it's happening. We're articulating our case, we're prosecuting our case in terms of vaccination. The media is really happy to talk to us about it. They often want us to be combative with the people that sort of say negative things. We're not interested in that sort of dialogue with the media, and they sort of leave us alone after a while, but then all of a sudden some negative stuff comes out and they want to talk to us again. But our attitude is just like every other parts of the agreement. If they're good patient outcomes, and we know that there's good patient outcomes in pharmacists doing vaccination, it just stands to reason that we're going to forge ahead. We're going to make sure the patient has one more area they can go and do their vaccinations at, and that is their community pharmacy hub. Yeah.
It doesn't. I know a person asked this question at the seminar. It doesn't help when groups are offering discount vaccinations, though, does it? It sort of muddies the waters.
It muddies the waters a little bit, but at the end of the day, the Guild's not going to get involved with pricing or anything, but certainly with professional services. Yeah, we want it to be done as a professional service in a professional environment. Sure, the patient and the local pharmacy will have to work out what the right price is, but a vaccination needs to be done in a confidential area, in a private area, with all the professional services that you're offering in that pharmacy. So that, to me, means in a private room, in a consulting room. So we've always advocated for that. Get organised, get yourself a consulting room in your pharmacy, get ready for these services that you can perform. We had a bit of a hiccup last year with the caps that we had to put on the meds checks. So some people got a little bit, disenfranchised or negative about it. But we're going to keep advocating for professional services in a professional arena. Yes, inside the pharmacy, but in a confidential area. Let's do them properly so we don't get targeted by negative stakeholders out there that say silly things about doing these vaccinations in the aisles and stuff. Yeah.
And what's happening with the caps on meds checks and HMRs and whatever? Do you see there'll be progress with those?
Well, they've worked because the funding's still there.
Yeah.
So even though, like I said, we got attacked about early last year, they've definitely worked. We got the budget right. The funding's not going to run out till the 30th of June. We don't want any accolades or thank yous for that. But at the end of the day, we made our point pretty clear last year that the funding was going to run out. We made sure it doesn't. So that funding is going with the caps. Those services are being performed every day, every month. And we believe that we've shown the government that not only can we manage those programs, but next time around we need some improvement in those programs in terms of funding dollars, but also more targeted outcomes. So the business rules need to be changed a bit. We've certainly put that in our submission. We're going to work hard with government to make sure the business rules are robust, with some form of capping. Well, let's increase the caps as well, because we know that most pharmacies and pharmacists can perform more of those professional services in their pharmacies, but let's not just let them go crazy and just people do whatever they want.
But you will be seeking an increase in funding for those programs?
Increased funding, north, yes.
Okay. And how's the relationship with doctors' groups at the moment? I mean, given obviously the vaccination issues put it back on the agenda.
Yep.
How's it going at the moment?
Well, I deal pretty closely with Brian Aller, the president of the AMA. I've got his number on my phone. He's got my number, so we communicate as regularly as we can. We see each other at the airport regularly. We have a very robust relationship. We talk openly. We agree to disagree on some things, but I have a really good relationship with him, and I had a fairly similar one with Steve Hamilton. So at the top end, we communicate. I know in some areas the PSA as well is having a great relationship or a good relationship with the AMA, and also with the PSA the same thing with the Guild. So we're talking to them. Of course, Chris, we agree to disagree on some issues, but we've got to work together. So my attitude with all those stakeholders, including the AMA, is let's work together. Let's work out our differences, but let's move forward. So if we can find some areas that we can work together, let's work together so we don't create silos and create issues for the health department and also their budgets.
And can I ask about the recent audit report?
Yeah.
It obviously produced a bit of negative publicity, undeservedly in my opinion, but obviously the negative publicity is out there in the mainstream media, and people who aren't aware of the situation may choose to view it in one particular way. I mean, what's your view of that?
Oh, our view is what we said in our press release and what we've said verbally in other media outlets is that audit was purely and simply on the health department. Yes, it was on the current agreement, and it came up with 6 recommendations. We agree with every single one of them. The Guild is more than happy to move forward with those recommendations. The health departments agree with every single recommendation. We don't like politicising the audit report. The auditors did what they do. They audit things. They check to see if there was minutes at the meetings. They check to see if things got exactly balanced as the original budget was. Sure, they found some anomalies, but let's move forward. That's what auditors do. I mean, the Pharmacy Guild of Australia, we have our balance sheet and profit and loss report audited every year. That's what we do. Every now and then the auditors find mistakes, but we have no issue with the report. We actually worked really, really closely with the auditors during the area at the time when they were doing all the so-called investigations, and we gave them every piece of information that we had in our hands.
Now, obviously, at the moment, the Guild's focused on the agreement, but taking that out of the
So am
picture,
I.
and so are you, of course, yeah. But taking that out of the equation, what else is the Guild looking forward to over the next 12 months?
Well, as president, and I've said to the Guild members recently in the Guild member breakfast yesterday morning, and this is not confidential, that as the national president, I want to focus on making sure our members and the wider pharmacy community have access to as many services and streams that they can get themselves involved in as possible. The Guild has many resources. I've been given the job to run the Guild for the next 3 years, will be the president for the next 3 years. I want to offer as many solutions to my members and other stakeholders where possible as I possibly can. I'm not here to take over the world, but I certainly want to make sure that in terms of pharmacy we move forward and the future of pharmacy is positive. Yeah, sure, I get some negative feedback from time to time. I get people saying that, the Guild's not doing a good job, it's doing a median job, you should do a better job. My focus is to improve the future of pharmacy and bring everyone along that wants to come along with that.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, your members, I think, would generally agree with that, certainly from talking with people that I get.
Yep.
But do you think the wider pharmacy community, employed pharmacists and whatever, agree with that? I mean, how do you get them to come along with what the Guild wants?
To be transparent, to be open about issues, Chris, I am more than happy to talk to pharmacists that are not members. Certainly the capping issue that happened last year, I engaged and talked with every single person that sent me a fairly negative email. Now, I didn't engage with them by returning the emails. I engaged with them with picking up the phone and having a chat to them. And what surprised me the most was a lot of those pharmacists didn't even realise I was a pharmacist. Didn't even realise, for example, that
Really, they didn't know?
some people were confused. They thought obviously I was a CEO or some sort of employee. I mean, the misinformation out there is extreme. And even when they worked out I was a pharmacist, they didn't realise I knew how to review a chart, or that I was accredited to review a chart. I was one of the first guys that accredited to do the medication reviews. Yeah, sure, I haven't got time to do them now, but a lot of misinformation is out there. I still see all pharmacists as my colleagues, especially the young ones. I know they can't be Guild members straight away, and I want to keep those people or those pharmacists as close to us as possible. Sure, our constitution says they can't be members, but that doesn't mean we can't communicate with them, work out our differences, and get to employ these people too in our pharmacies where possible.
And speaking of young pharmacists, I mean, student numbers, what's the Guild's position on that at the moment? And are you working on the issue at all?
Our position is that we've got to work together with all the people that are responsible in the area. There's no help to anyone if we all close our eyes and say it's someone else's fault. It's no use someone saying it's the Guild's fault and I turn around and say it's someone else's fault. We all got to get together. We've got to get the universities together. The Guild is more than happy to be involved. I know the PSA wants to be involved. Let's sit down, talk it all out, find out what the actual amount of pharmacy students per year needs to be, that needs to come out, so we can employ all these kids. I mean, my son's in third year pharmacy, so I'm going through the same situation at home. My family has the same issues at the moment, but I want to make sure the outcome of kids that come into the pharmacy sector is at a number or at a capacity that the capacity of pharmacy owners, hospital areas, or any other services that these pharmacists want to perform can actually employ these people for a fair amount of money so they can live a proper lifestyle.
I think everyone in pharmacy, obviously accepts, that there are too many at the moment. How do you get the universities to agree to that, though, given they've got a different agenda altogether?
Great question, Chris. Get them all together in one room. So I believe that's happening now with this forum that we're conducting in Victoria, I think, to start with, that Anthony's going to lead on that. So I think
when's that happening, by the way? Actually,
very soon. I think in the next 4 weeks or so, they've actually picked a date. It's come out of a little small group that we started at Monash University. Bill Charman and I sat down when I was Vic President and talked about these issues, but we couldn't solve all the problems. Monash University and I can't solve all the problems. So we finally worked out, let's get all the universities together, any other stakeholder that's interested, and the PSA came on board straight away, like I said before. Get them all together. The board maybe needs to get involved as well, and we've got to make those hard decisions, because you're right, Chris, at the end of the day, if they keep tuning out the kids and we have got the capacity, it's not going to work. It's a supply and demand issue.
Now, speaking of hard decisions, I know you recently did a skydive.
Yep.
First time?
Yes.
Yeah. How was that?
It wasn't a hard decision, let me tell you, Chris. It was a very scary
They
decision.
didn't have to push you out at the end? Or?
They more or less did at the end. But yeah, it was very, very scary to start with. It was extremely noisy. It was done with the quasi-approval of my wife. She wasn't too happy about it. But no, it wasn't a big decision. You know, the Amneal people came and talked to me, the new pharmaceutical company or generic company that launched late last year, and they wanted to get involved in some sort of charity they thought might be a good cause, and they were grappling with who to choose. And they personally came to me and said, look, you know, can you recommend one? And at that stage, I had just got to know Dr. Charlie Teo and the Cure Brain Cancer Foundation, and I thought it was a good idea for the Guild to get involved. And I said, while I'm working that out, if you've got some money to give to someone, give it to this foundation. Their research is unbelievable on brain cancer. They're really doing something good. And they didn't even hesitate. They said, yeah, we'll give them. They had $10,000 in their budget. They said, well, but you've got to jump out of a plane. And that came out of left field. And I said, well, if that's what I have to do, I'll jump out of a plane. And of course, I went to my board this week, this Monday and Tuesday, because we had our board meeting this week, and said to them, this is ridiculous. I can't be recommending a pharmaceutical company to give $10,000 to my favourite charity. What do you guys think? And they jumped on board straight away. They said, look, we'll match it and let's do their campaign. There's a huge campaign coming up after May called Be Aware, where patients can walk into pharmacies and have all the collateral in the pharmacies and have a checklist where they can see if their headaches are really serious, or if they're not so serious, and they can be looked after by the pharmacist with pain management. So it links so well with community pharmacy anyway. So the Guild's on board with that campaign, and yeah, we've started a campaign to raise some money for them as well. And Charlie Teo's been very, very gracious about it.
And the cheque handover happened today?
Happened today in the exhibition stand. We had a little video from Charlie Teo saying thank you very much. Sorry I couldn't be there, but you know, he's a busy man. He's actually saving lives, you know. So he's a self-proclaimed best brain surgeon in the world, and I'm his biggest advocate.
Well, you've put your life on the line, so showing what community pharmacies are prepared to do, or pharmacists rather, are prepared to do for their for the wider community. So congratulations.
Thanks, Chris.
And thanks for your time, George.
No problem. Thank you, Chris.
And we'll be back with more from Pharmacy News from APP 2015.